Do you have a lot of guilt in your life and you just feel like no matter what you do, you will always feel guilty? So you end up just kind of giving up and just succumbing to it. Well, this podcast is totally going to ruffle some feathers. I'm really excited that I'm the one who's giving it to you. Because when I started looking at guilt in this way, it was such a game changer for me and I have not looked back. So welcome to my podcast. My name is Dara Thomason and I am the Quilter's Coach. And this is podcast 161, Guilty Feelings and How to Use Them for Good. Before I go into the meat of the podcast, which I can pretty much guarantee there are some concepts I'm going to teach today that you've never heard before. I'm really interested to hear what your thoughts are. But before I do, I always like to share a win from one of my one-on-one who was having a lot of frustration and disappointment with the way that she was running her calendar. So she was doing a lot of people pleasing and saying, yeah, I'm going to tell you, we are all really generous, wonderful, kind people. We have very kind, giving hearts. And so it's very natural for us to want to serve other people and want to do things for other people. But when we do that, we have a consequence. Not even if you're an introvert, but we as humans, we need to have time to rest. We need to have time to replenish. We need to have time to chill on our own and refill our own battery. And if we're constantly giving, then we're not able to give as fully because we're exhausted. What she did was, instead of beating herself up for overbooking herself, she was able to give herself a lot of compassion, and she's actually making new rules for herself on how much she gives, how much time she gives to others, how much time she gives to herself. And this is such a game changer. It's something that I have been doing more and more in my own life. And the reason why this is so powerful, not only is it for you as a human to be more rested and to be more like emotionally available to people, you're not feeling resentful, you're not being like kind of snipping at people, but you're being a model to other people of an example of what is. And you're also benefiting everyone around you, because the more that you can be relaxed and you can be in that better state of mind, then everyone else enjoys you more. Right? You can be the fun hostess. You can be the fun mom. You can be the fun wife. And you can be available at your best version. It's like your phone. When you update all the apps, it just runs more smoothly. It just works better. It's the same thing. Keep on going. Keep on making those boundaries. And in fact, today's tool is actually going to be talking a little bit about that. Imagine that. So let's talk about guilt. There's a lot of different ways of looking at guilt. And, you can do a Google search. There's lots of people all having their own opinion on what guilt is. So when I coach women and I help them with this, it's not lost on anyone, but guilt and quilt, there's only one letter difference. And then there's, so how often do we feel guilty? Every day. Even today, as I'm recording this, I have nobody at home. It's a Saturday. My boys are at camp, and I'm actually feeling a little bit guilty because I'm feeling like I'm not getting as much. I had this schedule that I made for myself, and I made a choice to switch it up because there was a live training that I wanted to go to. So even though I made that decision, feeling a little guilty because I'm not quite on the schedule that I made for myself last night. It is just very common. Let it be there. Oh, okay, I feel guilty. I'm not using my time as wisely. Hey, that's fine. We can just feel a little bit of guilt. These are the two ways that I look at guilt. And this is what I learned from one of my coaches who I really admire. Guilt is having two conflicting thoughts. So you can have the thought of, I feel really blessed and I want more. So you can see what a contrast that is. If you feel so blessed, then you shouldn't want more. So we have to start kind of slow down and question where does that come from and why is that the story? And then think about that for you. How many times do you say that to yourself? Like, I just love my family and I'm so grateful I have a home over my head. I'm so grateful I have a car, but I want a new one. I want a new car. I want a nicer one. Do you feel guilty? Okay, that's normal. That's one of the definitions of guilt. So welcome to being a human. And I'll just label it. And then the second one is denying yourself an emotion. I heard this a lot when I was professionally quilting. People would bring me their quilts and I would look at the quilt and I would say, oh, it's so beautiful. I love the choice of colors. And I would genuinely compliment them on the work that they did. And then they would say, oh yeah, but did you see this mistake? Oh, but did you see this? Oh, and then that one block took me so long. Yeah. So you deny yourself. So it comes from some version of, I don't feel good enough about myself. I don't feel like I'm fun enough or productive enough. It's like you don't allow yourself the emotion of feeling whatever that is. And that can be sad and happy and sad emotions. Let's take a little dive into how was guilt modeled to you as a kid? Now, this is the funny thing. And I'm sure all of you have experienced this, whether it's in your family or your workplace, and everyone has a different take. Like, oh no, I don't remember it that way. Well, even though, I'm this little kid watching my mom do things, the way that I interpret her talking to me was very different than the way that my siblings had. For example, my mom, she tried to make chores fun. So she would put them on every different chore on a slip of paper and she'd put it in a basket and we'd have to pick it out sometimes. Or sometimes my mom would, what was the other thing? Oh, when we were polishing floors, she would try to make it sound like it was really fun. And so one of the things that I took as a kid was my mom is doing the best she can, but other siblings would say different things. So even though we all lived in the same house, we all interpret the people around us said. That's a really important thing to remember, is that we all have our own take. Although I'm a Canadian, we get a lot of American influence in the media. There's a lot of different people having a lot of different takes on politics. They're very verbal about it and very loud. And it's just really interesting to me to see how everyone just takes their own way. All right. I would just recommend that you would just do a thought download. And a thought download is another word for is a thought dump. Or in other words, it's just everything that's in your head, you put it on a piece of paper. And I recommend you put a timer on for 3 minutes, 5 minutes, and just say, okay, I'm going to put everything that's in my head around guilt. What I remember as a kid, if I didn't do well on a test, or if I didn't clean my room well enough, or I didn't, I told my sibling to do the job that my mom had asked me to do. I don't know, whatever it is. Write it all down. This is the role that guilt played in my life. So now I want you to ask yourself, how often do you feel guilt in your life? So do you feel guilty sitting and watching a show? Do you feel guilty scrolling on your phone? Do you feel guilty spending money on yourself? Do you feel guilty spending money on groceries? Do you feel guilty buying more fabric? Do you feel guilty having more than 3 UFOs? I have my friend Cheryl, she celebrates having, I think at one point she had like 94 UFOs. And she's like, yeah, it just shows that I'm a super creative person, that I have lots of different ideas. So again, you can just decide how you want to think about the way that you run your own life. If you were modeled as a kid about guilt and all of that, and that felt really dangerous to you, then you're probably carrying that around with you like some heavy bricks. Now, where guilt lives in our bodies and how it affects weight loss. So there are different takes to this. I just want to be very clear that there are a lot of different people who have a lot of different opinions, and they are allowed. So there's a lot of work coming up. More and more you're seeing on how people use the parasympathetic and the sympathetic nervous systems that run along the vagus nerve. So the sympathetic nervous system is the system that is constantly having us be on guard. It's the one that's scanning for danger, right? So we have the fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. Fawn is the people-pleasing response. So it is always wanting to make sure that we're going to survive, that we can not be rejected from the tribe. Our system that is wanting to always protect us. So it's like the security guard, right? Or the watchtower, always making sure that we're safe. If we've got the message that losing weight or getting too popular or being too productive or trying to make ourselves better than we are. And maybe if our families are not very wealthy, so making too much money feels really dangerous because we could get kicked out of the tribe. That is a system that's always running, just like our heart is always beating, our eyes are always blinking, our hair is always growing. Those are just systems that happen in our body. If we are constantly feeling guilty and we're feeling like we're disobeying the rules or breaking the rules or whatever that is, then it's like our cortisol, right? Our stress levels are also really hyped up. When we have increased cortisol, then of course that actually helps us to gain weight and to keep the weight on. Dr. Jason Fung actually talks about that. He said, we don't even have to eat food to gain weight. Isn't that crazy? It's because the cortisol that goes through our body, if it's like saying, oh, this girl's really stressed out, we need to give her some energy, like fast-paced energy, so that she can keep up with the demands that are happening for her. And so that's why we gain weight, because the cortisol then increases this energy, this rush, and it affects our insulin. Our insulin gets spiked. And it's like, okay, what do we need to do? So that, and there's women that talk about like our cortisol face. So when our body's feeling stressed, we can be more bloated, we can be more puffy, because our body is saying, we can't be using all this energy because this person might have to flight, right? Or fight or freeze. And freezing and staying still does actually take a lot of energy. And then the people pleasing, the fawn, that also takes a lot of energy because we're doing everything for everyone else and we're not taking care of ourselves. Okay? So you can see like the ripple effects. And then the parasympathetic nervous system, what that does is we are able to be calmed. We're able to say, okay, I'm in my higher brain. I can see that this is a problem. I can see that we have some issues, but I also know that I have a history of resolving issues. I can solve problems. I'm really good at that. And so now we can be in that CEO brain and we can really knock it out, right? We can be super productive and we can work through the problem. These ancient healing holistic approaches. And one of the things that is in common with those different approaches is they look at guilt that comes from our uterus. It comes from the place where we give birth. And so guilt and creativity, they live in the same place. And so creativity, of course, when we create life, we're creating life. We're making this new life. And I love this quote by Dieter F. Uchtdorf that said, "The desire to create is one of the deepest yearnings of the human soul." Our creation place is in our womb. So that is where we create new life, literally. It's interesting to think that guilt is the opposite of that. Guilt lives in that place, right? Our uterus, which is our lower belly. If you put your hands on your lower belly, I invite you to do that and just say, hey, what's going on? So if you carry a lot of extra weight in that lower belly, there's a lot of guilt going on. So there is a woman named Louise Hay, and she has written this book called You Can Heal Your Life. It's over 50 million copies have been sold. You know, you can take everything that she says with a grain of salt, but there's a lot of wisdom and truth behind it. And one of the things that she talked about with guilt is she said, guilt, pain of any sort, to me is an indication of guilt. Guilt always seeks punishment, and punishment creates pain. Chronic pain comes from chronic guilt, often so deeply buried that we are not even aware of it. Guilt is a totally useless emotion. It never makes anyone feel better, nor does it change. Your sentence is now over, so let yourself out of prison. Forgiving is only giving up, letting go. And then she actually talks about how weight loss is this need for protection, which makes, it actually goes with how it works with guilt. So if we are feeling a lot of guilt and we're not processing it and we're not recognizing it, we're shoving it down, we are going to start accumulating more weight in that area. And what she says about being overweight is she says overweight represents a need for protection. We seek protection from hurts, slights, criticisms, abuse, sexuality, and sexual advances, from a fear of life in general and also specifically. Take your choice. And then she talks about how she's not a heavy person, but when she's feeling insecure and not at ease, she will put on a few pounds. When the threat is gone, the excess weight goes away by itself. And I agree with this. That's when I lost 30 pounds and then I lost the last 20 pounds when I had like no expectation. I was just loving and living my life. Then she said, fighting fat is a waste of time and energy. Diets don't work. The minute you stop, the weight goes back up. Loving and approving of yourself. Hello, this is my theme song. Loving and approving of yourself. Trusting in the process of life and feeling safe because you know the power of your own mind, makeup, and the best diet I know of. Go on a diet from negative thoughts and your weight will take care of itself. So when you control your thoughts, you can be empowered. Like, she's speaking my language. And it's interesting because I never read this book. My process came from my own experience and then the life coaching tools that I used. And then I love what she said here. Too many parents stuff food in a baby's mouth, no matter what the problem is. These babies grow up to stand in front of an open refrigerator saying, I don't know what I want whenever there's a problem. Guilt is a totally useless emotion. It never makes anyone feel better, nor does it change a situation. Oh, I love that she said that. So the uterus represents the home of creativity. When you go to bed at night, when you wake up in the morning, when you're having a shower, or whenever it feels comfortable for you, I know it's going to be a little awkward at first, but I do encourage you to put your hand on your belly, your lower belly, and just say, hey, what's going on? How you doing? When you can acknowledge that guilt is just piling up, that's affecting your health, then that's going to make a big difference. So now that we have that information, I really want to encourage you to, like I said, put your hand on your belly and say, hey, what's going on? And then pause and actually listen to what your body's going to respond. Our body holds emotions. Our body is there to help us. So when we can put our hands on our belly or wherever we are, we can get so much information and we can get that feedback, right? So what the life coaching tool that I want to just share here, and it's in the handout, and I kind of started a guideline for you, but we talk about the manual. When I was growing up, the manual was your house has to be immaculate, clean, organized. There is no space for any sort of disruption whatsoever. You cannot go to bed without having a clean kitchen, a clean house. Everything has to be put away. And if you don't do that, you're a terrible person. And I've shared this before in the past, where I went to a very amazing, incredible, talented woman. We went to her house and I was shocked because her house was messy. I was 10 and I was shocked. I didn't think that you could be a good, wholesome person and have a messy house. I actually didn't think that was possible. It was very confusing to me because the manual that was given and shown to me was you have to have a clean house to be a good person. I also have an aunt who slept maybe 3 hours a night because she vacuumed her house 5, 6, 7 times a day, just dusted and cleaned and polished, and she ironed all of the clothes. She ironed all the sheets. She ironed everything. So it was modeled to me. When you understand that other people have different rules and they have different ways of living, and then you also get to make that decision for yourself, but you can write your own rules. You can make your own manual. You can create that for yourself. And when you start doing that, it's a game changer. You have to be willing to do it. So this is where, so I have it on the worksheet here. So start now by writing down what you really want in your life. Kind of like when people build a new house. I want to have this color of kitchen. I want to have this color of wall. I want to have this kind of flooring. I want to have this kind of layout. Just like building a new house and just like building a new life, there are going to be some restrictions. Like you have taxes and there's sometimes like building restrictions. We have different people in our lives and we can't choose our mother-in-laws. We can't choose the way our husband reacts to certain things. We can't choose the price of groceries, but we can choose how we want to react to all of those. So I've got a bunch of different ideas here, like strengthening relationships with husband, kids, and friendships, volunteer a certain amount of hours, legacy time, like how do I want to contribute? Do I want to, like, how much time do I want to devote to hobbies? How much time do I want to devote to having leisure? Like, well, how many vacation days do I want to take? What about our learning and growth, like self-development? How much time do I want on that? And so I'm going to just leave this podcast with you with just a few things to wrap it up. Okay. I like the bow. I like wrapping things up in a nice little bow. Just to recap, first of all, guilt. It's a useless emotion. It's a good one in the fact that it's like a red flag. Oh, I didn't realize I didn't realize I was going down that road. Kind of like people pleasing. It's like, I can't believe I just did all that people pleasing. That's crazy. Good to know. Guilt is having two conflicting thoughts. I feel very blessed with my life and I want more. And guess what? You can actually just allow to have those both. You don't have to push against it. You can just be like, yes, I feel very blessed and I want more. No problem. Because that wanting, Dan Sullivan says it really well. What you want is what you want. And you don't have to feel guilty about it. You're a good person. You don't have to justify it and you can just go for it. So I love that permission when he said, what you want must be good because you are a good person. You don't have to justify any of it. Okay, so permission granted there. And then the second reason we feel guilt is denying ourselves of an emotion. Oh, I'm not that good. I'm not, you don't accept those compliments, or you don't allow yourself to believe that you're as awesome as you actually are. Okay, so now we're just going to stop doing that because that's not helpful. No one wins and everyone loses when you roll around in that. Not helpful. You can just make a commitment to stop doing that and work on that. And then I want you to look at how was guilt modeled to you as a kid, and then you can just make peace with it. I come from a very long line of martyrs, and they used a lot of guilt as motivation. And the last thing I want to just reiterate is, and I want to invite you to make a rule, your rule book. And you have to start with what you want, and then you can work towards it. If it helps you to write down what your current rule book is, that's great. And that's what's called the manual, and we can edit that. That's another podcast. But what I want you to do right now is say, this is what I want my rule book to look like. And then you can strive to work towards that. This has been so awesome to share this with you. This is coming out on August 15th. And the month of August, we, of course, we're working on 2 pounds a week in our program. Doing the emotional work is the only thing that's going to help you to make it stick. Anyone can use willpower. Anyone can white knuckle it for a while. But when you do this emotional deep dive in my program, then you are going to be able to guarantee 2 pounds a week. And I have a 20 pounds and 90-day money back guarantee. It's amazing. Stop saying, I'm going to sign up later, because I have seen so many women who keep saying, I'm going to do it later, and they come to my free trainings and they get really excited, but then they don't show up. The people that did join and they do show up, it's a year later, it's 2 years later, and they're down 50 pounds. 50 pounds is a lot of weight for your hips, your knees, your heart, your arteries. And it's because they finally just said, okay, let's go. So those people who are carrying around that 50 extra pounds, it's hard. But the people who took off the 50 pounds, it's hard too. But at least they know they're making the changes. Okay, sometimes we need a little bit of that kind of mama to talk to you. Are you ready? There will never be a perfect time. I promise. But the best time is always right now. So let's go. I will see you in the membership. Not, of course, I always see you every week on my podcast. If you want more help with learning about your body and how it's changing through menopause, perimenopause, through whatever it is, my program is focused on helping you truly become your own best expert. So as we go through August, we're really diving into how to lose the physical weight when you focus so much on the mental. I have an incredible program for that coming in August. So there's so much to look forward to. You truly can make your own transformation. And I love helping you find that inner knowledge and wisdom that's just waiting for you to unlock so that you can create permanent change for yourself.